My problem with China is, of course, I admire their economic success and so on, but did you notice how after Trump's stupidities 3-4 weeks ago, I don't know how to pronounce the name, the Chinese president offered China as the agent of new globalization. But I don't like that globalization. Why not? Because if you read not even between the lines, but in the lines, just in detail, you get a clear model. Economic globalization, but culturally, each country rooted in its tradition, and so on and so on. So you have, and this is, I think, even the deeper meaning of what is going on now with Turkey, all this. A new capitalism is emerging, which combines in a perfect way local, ethnic-centric authoritarianism with open economy. And I think, as I put it in a comment that nobody wants to publish, it's typically, if in the old days, which means 5-10 years ago, we had what I called Zionist anti-Semitism, you know, like, this is Trump's politics. In United States, his right-wingers don't want Jews, but Israel is good. So you are pro-Zionist there, but you warn against too strong influence of Jews in your own country. Now we are getting something similar with regard to Islam. That's again Trump's politics. In United States, extremely anti-Islamist, but Saudi Arabia is good. Like, you can do horrors there, just not here. And I think this is the new world that is emerging. It's no longer what horrible as it was, this, and it was very violent neo-colonialist, this. We know what human rights are, and so on and so on. But I think now maybe an even worse world is emerging, where you can do whatever you want culturally in your country with women, with gays, just obey economic rules, integrate, and so on and so on. And the tragedy is that this is even presented as post-colonialism. No wonder that, you know who openly supported, I love these symptoms, Trump? Mugabe. He said, I agree with him. For him, it's America first. For us, it's Zimbabwe first, and so on. This model is this model is pretty terrifying, I think, because when we both agree on globalism, but this globalism should not just be economic globalism. It has to be a new social vision of, I don't know what kind of solidarity. We all agree here. I mean, that's, and even the intelligent capitalists know it, all that bunch that I think when we take people, sorry for bad taste remark, power, they should be, they are the first to be shot, I think. Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Tim Cook, and so on. All these false, newly discovered post-capitalists and so on. They are the most dangerous. They obfuscate problems, truly. Radical change is needed. And my view here is pessimist one. What can we do? Of course, we grab every opportunity, Corbyn, Bernie Sanders, and so on, and get ready for the crisis. Don't be afraid, it will come.
Yeah, but you know, you're talking about Zuckerberg. Like, this is the different, for me, when somebody, like a CEO from the tech world, goes and spends a year in an ashram and studies yoga and meditates and learns the sciences of whatever that is. And then when they come back to the real world, they apply it to how their company can do better or how they make more money. And so like, it's very weird that sort of knowledge can be extracted of self enhancement, you know, or
why do you find it weird? I find it totally natural.
Yeah, I find that very weird. And I is that the future? Why? Is that a norm that everyone is going to access, like, you know, the kind of things that teach us to be a bit more, I don't know, of a humanitarian, but then always apply it to a capitalist model, because that is, you know, it's one of those things that goes into what makes an acceptable, successful human being, is a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of this and a bit of that. So
you know where it all began? I'm sorry, you may probably know it, the book that I quote all the time, Brian Victoria, Zen at War. The first who practiced this were Zen Buddhists in Japan in late 30s, 40s. They totally supported Japanese military interventions in China. They even provided authentic, as far as I can say, Buddhist justification for them. I will give you a nice example, very short one. I'm sorry some of you know it. Daisetsu Teitaro Suzuki, in my youth, the great teacher of Zen Buddhism, wrote in late 1930s a wonderful text of advices to Japanese military, where he says, Buddhist meditation is the best way to train perfect killing machine soldiers. Because he said, sorry for the bad taste remark, let's say you are the enemy, I confront you on the battlefield. If I remain caught in the illusion of reality, then I will have some trouble killing you, you know, my God. But if I adopt the Buddhist view, there are just appearances, I don't have a self, I just observe dancing on phenomena, then that's Suzuki's description. It becomes easier. My knife is floating in the air, your body in this comic dance falls on my knife, and so on. That's for me the horror. Very authentic meditation can perfectly serve as a, that's why
I come from Sri Lanka. I come from Sri Lanka, and it's Buddhists versus Hindus, which are quite similar. But yeah, the Buddhists are supposed to be super passive, and you know, they're like one of the most sort of chauvinistic or fascist regime we've got there.
Yeah.
And there are witnesses who say that the monks have killed people, you know, with their own hands. And I feel like all of that is then, you know, it's going to rewrite what Buddhism is, I guess, or things like that just kind of evolve how those well, the concept of spirituality fits into our modern society, or concept of religion. But that, I think, is probably something where we should get to next, because when you get to, you know, money, or when you get to activism and being able to stick your neck out for something, because I think Corbyn is that sort of interesting figure, because he stood in a battlefield and people were throwing lots of stuff at him, but he managed to stay very, you know, calm through a lot of shitstorm, and he managed to also unite a lot of people without speaking aggressively or adopting the aggressive mannerism of the opposition.
That's the true miracle. I'm sorry if I interrupt, but it's really an incredible, and I say this with all respect, ethical revolution that put to shame the cynics. Many of my leftist friends said, listen, I would have loved Corbyn, but frankly, he doesn't stand a chance, and so on. You know, this liberalism at its most disgusting. He's against Corbyn, but he masks this as just a realist insight, and so on. No, he did a true, genuine ethical revolution. All those cynics like Tony Blair, who said, sorry, Corbyn means Labour Party is unelectable, and so on and so on. I totally agree with you. This is, so I'm not saying the situation is hopeless. Look, even with my old example, with Obama, whatever you say about him, he did try healthcare, which is now ruined, and so on. We should simply work at all levels here, because you know what should give us hope? It's not that we are facing an omnipotent enemy. That enemy, big capital, is now more and more getting caught in antagonisms, in crisis, and so on and so on. The situation is not lost.
Are we looking at a world that is one bank, one religion?
No. Do you think?
Acceptable thing?
No. There are so many. Look just at what is happening. And if I may propose that we turn to the guy who is so lazy, he didn't want to walk here. He preferred to sleep in Ecuadorian embassy. Sorry, that's my internal joke. I always talk about this, about my good friend Julian. Here, for example, if I may turn to his domain. Where did I feel the last time a great need for new WikiLeaks? Look, this weird thing, we even don't know what is happening, that's happening now with Qatar. What is behind all this? What is really going on?
Yeah, but WikiLeaks published about it in the Saudi cables already.
Already, but we need more now. Yeah. That's my point, sorry. Without WikiLeaks, from the main media, you simply don't get, first, from the main media, you get simply absolute absurdities. Like, wait a minute, Saudi Arabia accusing another country of terrorism. Saudi Arabia, which is not even a state. This is kind of a mafia family, combining the most modern stock market investment capital with old, fake, corrupted pseudo-traditions, supporting what? Listen, all my respect sincerely to victims of London bombing, but you know, don't talk about London if you don't want to talk about Yemen now, for example, where Saudi Arabians are bombing serially, millions displaced and so on, it's strangely under. So here we need like daily bread, WikiLeaks, more of WikiLeaks to learn. Without WikiLeaks, you see, Qatar is an example how without WikiLeaks, we simply don't even know where we stand. I don't know.
I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this talk as well, even though there's been a lot of like, you know, pushback on social media. And, you know, for me, as I see myself quite neutral. But for me, it's really important to have something like WikiLeaks, just because you know that they've already proved that they don't do stuff for money, you know, and they can't be really bought. And I think more figures like that in society are important. And more of those figures in society are in, you know, danger. And one of the things that I think I'm quite optimistic about in London is that kids don't care, you know, like if you look at the way people were talking during the election and stuff like that, people were quite open, and they seem to be showing that they're on the right side of, you know, that kind of thinking. And I just feel that how do we protect ourselves? Because one of the fears is that, you know, your social media passwords have to be handed in and you're going to get regulated. And obviously Theresa May didn't leave the parliament. She is there. And, you know, is that quite a dangerous thing to remove, say, somebody like WikiLeaks from, you know, from the story basically at a moment like this where it's quite neck and neck?
Yeah, I think if I may add something before the guy from the embassy, Julian, our good friend, appears. I think you mentioned Theresa May and you mentioned the internet. And I think what we have to do today, after the Swedish case was dropped, which, you know, I think it's important to say it again, that Julian was never charged. It was a preliminary investigation. And now that Sweden dropped the case, now the masks have fallen. Now we can see what it was about all the time. It was about extraditing Julian Assange to the US because now the Trump administration wants him. But I would like to put it here, because we are in London, in the UK context. We have to remember that Theresa May was the Home Secretary when the Ecuadorian embassy was under the siege, when 300 policemen came to the embassy and wanted to kick out Julian and extradite him to the US. You know what's the cost of the siege of the embassy today, with all the surveillance and everything, what is happening around the embassy? 19 million pounds. So, you know, when we speak about Theresa May, we have to speak about this money which could be used for schools and so on and so on. And
this would be leftist austerity politics that we should support. No money for police there. Sorry, please go on.
No, but I think, you know,
well, that's very similar to how much she spent on the campaign. And they said that they could treat like 5,000 people with dementia for one whole year with that money. So that's what you're looking at.
Yeah, I think this is crucial.
Yeah, so but why do they want him so bad?
Well, there are so many reasons why do they want him so bad, and they go back to 2010 and the Afghan warlocks, Iraq and everything. I mean, just look at the Saudi cables now. I mean, what WikiLeaks published already several years ago, you know, 2 years ago, they anticipated what would be happening now. So he has so many enemies, which go from the Saudis to the US.
But may I add, and then I will shut up, I promise.
Yeah,
just
which
too brief.
We will never do, I know, but anyhow.
Fuck off. Croat Ustasa. Okay, no, sorry, very briefly, really, two important things. First,
and now he will give a lecture.
Yeah, no. Yes, no. That I think we are now on the right path. Everybody focuses just on WikiLeaks' secret documents. I think maybe our Ecuadorian lazy guy who just sleeps there, his greatest achievement is, you know, he published a book which was strangely ignored on Google, demonstrating this is, you know, this is also the answer of those detractors of Julian who say, but why he doesn't publish more about Russia and so on.
Which he did. He published
Which
a lot
first he did. Second point, but listen, Russia, China, we all know what shitty authoritarian countries these are. But as two of you already hit that, his greatest breakthrough in his writing with Google and so on is that the greatest tragedy is how nobody is duped there. They live in authoritarian, but we, or in the United States, we think we are free. We have media, we can use them freely, they help us. But in this way, how we are even more controlled, directed, and so on. Listen, what is the typical guy today? It's, you don't even expect experience yourself as a proletarian. You are precarious worker, you choose this job, that, and the new fashionable word is a self-entrepreneur. Like, I'm doing the same thing as my billionaire friend, which I don't can just erase a couple of zeros and so on. So you see, our very unfreedom, this total anxiety is sold us as a new freedom. You don't have a permanent job, wonderful. You can reinvent yourself every 2 years, construct new identity and so on. That's, I think, ideologically, at a more general level, the big lesson of WikiLeaks. Yes, we agree, we know Putin, China, shitty countries, authoritarian, but don't think that our Western liberal countries are also not in some way even more menacing totalitarian.
Especially Silicon Valley, what you mentioned.
Yeah,
Google,
yeah,
Facebook,
yeah, because our unfreedom is presented to us precisely as our new freedom. I'm free, I look on Google, I can choose whatever you want, and so on and so on. That's, I think, where he really hits the core of our Western liberal ideology. That's why I love him.